for those of you that don't know me, my name is Saskia and I'm a second year psychology student at the University of Southampton. So you can tell by the title I'm going to talk about the IB Biology IA. I've made one video about IB Biology before, which I got a lot of hate for actually. That was really fun. I had to delete a lot of very hateful comments basically saying like, why do I hate the IB so much? You do the IB and then tell me you don't hate it. You can't. Like, yeah. And I did a video for the IB Psychology IA. I did a lot more psychology videos because they tend to be more popular and more in demand, I guess. But I thought I'd kind of quickly go through like the criteria of an IB Biology IA, how to generate an idea, any tips, how to make it easier for yourself, because it's 20% of your grade given to you for free. You want to get that as a 7. Even if you're currently working at like a 4, if you get that as a 7, you could pull your exam papers up to a 5. Like, regardless of what grade you're currently working at in exams, the IA is so different in terms of the skill set that it requires that you can easily get a much higher grade than you could achieve in exams. So I just thought I'd start off with the grade boundaries. So if you get, actually I don't know if this is for standard or higher level, the grade boundaries, but it's out of 24. I think all IAs are out of 24. If you get 0 to 3 marks, you get a 1, 4 to 6, you get a 2, 7 to 10, you get a 3, 11 to 13, you get a 4, 14 to 16, you get a 5, 17 to 19, you get a 6, and 20 to 24, you get a 7. So you have to pretty much get most of the marks to get a 7. I would say regardless of what grade you're working at, aim for a 6. Try and get like 17 marks, or get a good 5, like a solid 5, because then percentage-wise it works out better. So yeah, do what you can. In my IA, in my draft, I got 19, and then in my official one, I think I got 21. I don't think we actually ever found out. I know I got a 7 in it in the end, but I don't think we actually ever found out specifically the grade that we got. Like, I found out in psychology, we got given a sheet that said like the breakdown. I didn't really get that for biology, but alas, we move. So then coming up with an idea, make it easy for yourself. Do not pick something that actually is hard. If you're standard level, do something from cells, because cells is the best content. It's easy content, it's easy to explain, you don't need that many words to explain anything. Like, do cell membranes. How does temperature affect membrane, pH affecting membrane? So easy. And then just do it with like coloured dye. Easy. Celery, coloured dye, done. If you're higher level, transpiration, beautiful, easy. Xylem movement, easy, beautiful. If you're standard level, like burning food, calories in food, reducing sugar tests, anything that isn't easy, practical to do, that won't take you too much time. Because we got given a whole day to do our IAs. As in, we came in the morning with all of our equipment already there, and we just went. I only spent 4 hours, like before lunchtime, doing my experiment, and the whole of the afternoon, I finished my IA. I had the write-up done. I didn't actually have to do more than the introduction at home. Like, get it done in a useful way. Pick a really easy topic. I think I'll link down below some examples that I found. There aren't many examples of a completed IA, but there are loads of examples of like ideas of what you can do. Go for something very easy. You will not regret picking something easy, because they don't mark you on how hard your experiment actually is. They just mark you on how well you did. Like, it doesn't matter if you pick something really complex about like, I don't know anything complex, but like if you pick something really complex, you're not going to get marked any better than someone that literally just looked at cell division. Like, you won't get marked better. It's not worth wasting your time on something hard, using difficult ingredients, different methods, stuff. It's not worth it at all. Do something that will be a quick experiment, easy experiment, and one that you understand. Like, I know that we did a few example IAs and we weren't allowed to directly do what we'd done in the example, but we could just modify it. Like, we did temperature on membrane permeability, could have just done pH. Same IA, you've got the example report written up because we had to write up the example, so I already had the IA. Just change the word temperature for pH and I'm done. Like, go for something very, very easy. That is the first tip, most important tip. Then we have the criteria. So you get 2 marks for personal engagement. Lie. My IA was on transpiration in flowering plants. I was looking at temperature and the movement of pigments. Easy. I made it a little bit more fancy, but it was just coloured flowers. My personal engagement was an absolute lie. I said that I wanted to do photography and I wanted my flowers to have an authentic, colourful look. Don't do photography, don't care about the colourful look. They're not going to check your lie. Lie about what you want. If you're going to do bacteria, say you want to work in a hospital. If you're going to do anything to do with pigments and movement, say that you like art and photography. If you're going to do anything about food, say that you want to be a dietitian. Say that you're interested in nutritional content. Just lie. They cannot tell that you've lied. All the IB will get is a report that says, you know, you're number 12, HW18. They'll be like, they sound like they said they want to be a dietitian, so they studied food. Tick, 2 marks. So easy. I want to be a dietitian, so I wanted to look at nutritional content in foods because this is an area of personal interest to me. It's literally like a 2-sentence thing. I think mine was at the very beginning. Very, very quick. Very easy. Then we have the exploration, which is worth 6 marks. Just quickly though, personal engagement you can get 2 marks in very, very easily. Why is the sun coming out? So then exploration, 6 marks. You need a research question. You just need it to not be bad. It doesn't have to be scientific. You don't get marked on how sciencey it is. You get marked on whether it makes sense as a question. So we'll just ignore the sun. It's just how it is. Research question doesn't have to be hard. You just have to have independent variable, dependent variable. I am looking for a change. Is there an effect of changing the temperature on the speed or the rate of transpiration in a flowering plant? Independent variable mentioned, dependent variable mentioned, what change I'm looking for. Or just, is there an effect? Very, very easy. You can literally just put, my research question is. Insert your research question, done, move on, next point. You then need background. Background doesn't have to be very long. You can literally just say, like, I was looking at transpiration, my background was just, what is transpiration? Why does transpiration happen? And then because I was looking at temperature, I then just Googled, how does temperature affect transpiration? 2 paragraphs. Easy. If you're doing cell membrane, 1 on the membrane, 1 on how temperature affects it, how pH affects it. If you're doing burning food and calories, what are calories? And then why does burning food tell you how many calories there are in it? And why would you expect a change in different food types? You don't have to make it long. Also for this, don't include pictures unless you reference them. So I included a picture of a cell membrane in my draft, and I basically got told they don't care unless I'm going to say, in figure 1 you can see the phospholipid bilayer. If you're not going to put it as figure 1 and mention it, it just wastes space. It's not worth having. Your background doesn't really have to be long, it just has to be correct science. You can use BioNinja. I use BioNinja for everything. Pretty much everyone uses BioNinja for everything. You can use BioNinja. You don't have to use like papers of real sciencey stuff. You just have to fully explain your background. Like if you're looking at transpiration, what is transpiration? If you're looking at a flowering plant, what is a flowering plant? And then you're looking at temperature. What is temperature? How does that affect transpiration in a flowering plant? Link all of your words together. Make sure that you clearly explain what the science is. And also don't do an IA on something you've not studied. I feel like that's relatively obvious, but like if you've not done ecology yet, don't do one on ecology. We then have methodology. So this is your method, your equipment list. Equipment list specific, very specific, as in like I want 2 of these. I want a thermometer, but this brand of thermometer in this way. Like you have to include I had to include like paper towels in mine that I wanted. I wanted water, but not just water, 200 ml times 5 in a plastic beaker. Make it very specific. That's the thing about your IA, it has to be for dummies. It has to be that if I read your IA as someone that has never studied science, I could completely follow the method without needing to ask you any questions. Then with your method, it has to be, again, very specific. So if you're going to say, measure out something, how are you measuring that? You would need to say, measure out this by scooping it into a little pot on the weighing scales and checking that it reaches 400 grams. Very specific. If you say, check the temperature, how do I do that? You have to act like I'm an idiot. Like, I would know what check the temperature means, put a thermometer in it, but you have to say, check the temperature with a thermometer, make sure that the thermometer reaches this temperature, then remove the thermometer and wash it with clean water to reset it. Like, very specific, annoying things. It's very tedious, very pedantic things. Safety and ethics, you just have to say there are no ethical concerns. Like, we had to refer to CLEAPs, but we basically just had to say that there's no safety issues. We had to do a little risk assessment, and I was like, oh, if people are allergic to flowers, they need to leave the room. Because I think I had to use this, sun. I think I was like, because I'm using a scalpel, don't cut yourself. I was like, because I'm using dye, wear gloves. I had to basically do the risk, the hazard, and then hazard reduction. So the hazard would be scalpel, risk would be, could cause injury. Hazard protection would be use scalpel correctly. Very simple things, like using dye. I was like, hazard, dye, risk, could it be ingested? And then it was like, wear gloves and wash hands. Very simple, very small things. And then ethics, you probably don't have any ethical issues unless you can't use live animals, you can't use anything live. I think I just put as ethical concerns, I was like, feeding into capitalism because I bought flowers from the shop. It's not really anything, you just have to say that there are no ethical concerns because you're not doing anything that's ethically wrong. Like, it makes sense. For your exploration, you don't have to include about your prelim, but do include about your prelim. So I did a preliminary test, and in my preliminary test I found that my food colouring didn't work and I had to use dye instead. I wrote that up. I was like, oh, I had to change the methodology after doing a preliminary experiment because food colouring did not actually show in my plant, and therefore I wouldn't have been able to measure it. But yeah, you also have to say like exactly what you're measuring. So I forgot to mention, but I was literally counting the amount of flowers, the amount of, what are they called? Petals on my plant, and then counting the ones that had colour on them, and then putting that into a percentage. So that would again go in your exploration. Maybe in the research question, maybe in the methodology, but you would just say, I'm going to be measuring this. Like, you have to explicitly say, I'm changing this, and I am measuring this. And I was like, how are you measuring that? Like, if you're measuring the zone of inhibition, what is that? How do you measure that? I would measuring the zone of inhibition by taking a ruler and measuring the distance that is not covered in bacteria. I would then be working this out as the surface area of the circle. Random stuff like that. So yeah, if you do a prelim, which you probably would do, write up about your prelim, just say like, oh, I did a prelim, I had no issues and therefore I didn't alter my experiment. Or I did a prelim, found lots of issues, this is what I changed. Like, let them know what you changed and why you changed it. So then analysis is then worth 6 marks. Your raw data, you just put your raw data in. Very simple, make a table on Excel, make a table in Word, Google Docs, just put all of your data in. It's not hard. Like, you literally just get marked for having raw data. You then process your data. So sometimes you'll do a mean, a mode, a median, do whichever one's accurate. I did a mean, I just did the mean of 5 trials, 3 trials, and you have to show your workings. So like, you have to show your workings for your calculation that you do. So like, if you're doing titration, you have to show the calculation for that. I literally just did a mean, and I just had to show that I was doing 17 plus 15 plus 12 divided by 3 equals this. I just had to do one example of that and then say, this was then continued for all of my steps. And I'm doing it to 2 decimal places because of this. It's, yeah. You just process your data however you want to. You make sure that your data is processed correctly. You then have your graph. So we had to hand draw ours. I don't know if that was just a thing for me, but our school made us hand draw them. But I work as a tutor, so I look at a lot of people IAs, and they have been fine using online graphs. So like, ask your teacher what they want you to do essentially with your graph, and then just do that. Make a graph, put error bars on it. They love an error bar. That's always a good shout. Label your axes, give your graph a title, call it figure 2, a graph to show. They love that kind of rubbish. And then you have to basically get marks for interpretation of your data. So we had to interpret our raw data and then interpret our processed data. So I was like, oh, from the raw data, it would suggest this. However, until I've processed the data, I won't know. Then, from the processed data, it suggests this, this, and this. Because of this mean, because of this standard deviation, those kinds of things. You then get marks for uncertainty. I don't really know what uncertainty was, but essentially uncertainty is any issues that might have happened. So if you have a thermometer and your thermometer just measures in, 1 degree increments, you have an uncertainty of 1 degree, like plus or minus 1 degree. Or like if you have a thermometer that goes to 1 decimal place, you have an uncertainty of plus or minus 0.1. Yeah, something along those lines. You basically just have to say there was some uncertainty, we could fix this by doing this. So if you use a bog standard thermometer, you'd say, oh, I can improve this by using a digital thermometer that goes to 2 decimal places. If you have uncertainty with weighing scales, I could use better weighing scales to make sure that I reduce these uncertainties. I think we had to do 1 paragraph for each uncertainty, but it was literally just tiny. This was the uncertainty, it was plus or minus 1, it was plus or minus 0.1. Here's why it could have been an issue, here's how it could have affected our data, and then here's how I would fix it. We also had to talk about like personal errors, so if there was any like method errors or scientific errors, you basically just say there weren't any. You just say like the method was effective, I didn't make any mistakes, therefore there are no other areas of uncertainty. So then for your evaluation you get 6 marks, you need a conclusion. You just need a bog standard paragraph or sentence that says, I tested this, this is what I can conclude. So I think I concluded, oh, as you increase temperature, you get more transpiration until you reach this temperature, at which point transpiration is now halted. You then basically have to suggest, what does that mean? You have to conclude in a statement and then conclude in an explanation. So, why does transpiration stop once I reach this temperature? What does that suggest? So you'll also get marks for scientific context. This is basically just what is the science. So like, why did transpiration stop at this point? Why did it increase at this point? Why did things happen? How might this be useful in science? Long story short, it's not really useful in science. You then get marks for limitations. So your limitations can also just be your uncertainties. You can say like, oh, as explained above, there are a lot of uncertainties in my experiment which could have made the experiment worse, and therefore we should fix those. Or like, I only did 4 temperatures, I should do more. I'm sure the sun is annoying you, but trust me, it's annoying me a lot more. So yeah, limitations, I didn't measure many things. My method could have had flaws in it. I was working in an unsterile environment. Literally just random points that are like, oh, I'm not very good at science. My method was a bit off, anything along those lines. And then you have suggestions. So your suggestions are kind of linked with your limitations of things that could be improved, but also suggestions for future research on the same thing. So I said, do it with a different colour, see if the colour affects it, like add another variable, like basically just add another variable or change what you affect, like say that you do temperature and pH, do it on a different breed of flowers, do it on a different type of food, just add more variables or change your independent variable, change your dependent variable, change what you measure, like maybe measure something differently. So like I did the amount of petals that had colour on them. I could have measured the distance that the flower, the petal, the distance that the, oh my god, what's it called, pigment moved. So you will then also get 4 marks for communication. These are, again, they should be easy marks. You get marks for presentation, so like, does it fit in the word count? Have you paragraphed accordingly? Subheadings, not very difficult to just put subheading that says method, subheading that says preliminary, subheading that says raw data, interpretation, graph, background. Yeah, like split it into these sections on the IA. So you have your exploration, your analysis, your evaluation. Within that, so within your exploration, you're going to have research question, background, method, prelim, safety. Headings are not that hard. You also have 12 pages. I think it can be size 12 or size 11. Mine was exactly 12 pages with size 12. Just put it down to size 11. Like, it's fine. Also, some fonts will be slightly different in size, so if you're running out of space, just change the font to a different one and see if that improves it. I think you're allowed like typical fonts. So Calibri, Arial, Times New Roman, just choose whichever one looks better. You also get marks on your focus. So basically just find a structure and stick to that structure. And if your question is about, like, you know, I'm going to keep mentioning my example because it's the one I did, but like I did, oh my god, the effect of temperature on transpiration. I can't suddenly talk about pH, that's not relevant. Like I could mention a sentence that says, oh, pH can also affect transpiration, but I'm not explaining that. There's no point talking about it or mentioning anything that's not relevant to my question until I get to the suggestions for future research, when I could say, oh, pH affects this, let's investigate that. Like, just don't veer off from your topic. You know, like your teachers will mark it. You get one draft that your teachers mark. Listen to their feedback. I got quite a lot of feedback and I'm very happy I did. Like I was already on, what, 19 marks or something? It wasn't that my IA was bad, but I got a lot of feedback which was very helpful on small things. Like I think I didn't mention uncertainties in my original one, or my prelim write-up was too long. I also forgot to label things as like figure 1, figure 2, things like that. You do a reference list, you can do it as footnotes if you prefer, like there's no, do what style of things you want within the limitations from your teacher. Your teacher should kind of roughly talk you through it, as in we very briefly were like, this is what you need to do in personal exploration, this is what you need to do in your research question. They'll roughly go through it for you, but you can probably find examples online. I will link below a checklist, which is essentially what the examiners will look through. They will read your work, check whether you have these things. So it's probably worth having those things because it's literally what the examiners use. So that is pretty much everything. Coming up with an idea is kind of hard, but just ask your teachers. Google, there's quite a few ideas on Google. If you literally just Google IB psychology, if you Google IB biology IA examples, ideas, that's relatively simple. There's a lot of places that will have kind of ideas per topic. So if you know that you're really bad at topic 2, do one on topic 1, or a different topic than the one that you're not good at. Like do one on a topic that you understand, that's easy for you, that you can explain well because you actually get what it's trying to say. Don't waste time on it. If your teacher sets it, get it done. Like we got set to do all of our background before we came in to do the experiment. Do that. Don't be an idiot and not do it until the day when you're then like, well, how does this actually relate? Because you might end up having to change your study, which is then just useless. So yeah, don't mess around. Don't mess around with deadlines. I know a lot of people in my class just didn't stick to deadlines and come to their prelim. Like, if you commit to a prelim, do your prelim. If you get told something's due in next week, do it for next week. Like with your IA, they didn't really check it that much. They don't really check it to kind of see that you're on track timings wise, because it's up to you. If you fail, that's not their fault. They've set it for you. It's independent work. You do it on your own. If you fail, that's 20% of your grade gone. That's nothing to do with them. Like, stick to the deadlines that they set you. Actually do your IA. Try and find examples online. Do an easy topic. Don't make it harder for yourself than it has to be, because it can be a very easy thing. Mine was very easy for me to write, very easy for me to analyse, a little bit difficult on like uncertainties because I don't really know what that was. But like the content was easy. Don't make the content hard. Like I spoke about this in my psychology video. Pick something easy to study. Pick an easy topic, because if not, it's just hard for yourself. But yeah, that's everything I've got to say. Hopefully that was helpful. If you do IB psychology, if you do IB biology and you want any more IB biology content, let me know, because I did a lot of psychology content and that's kind of quite popular and quite useful, but I don't really have any requests for biology content. And I also don't really know what to do if people wanted biology content. Like if someone says I want more IB biology content, what do you want? Specifically, help me out please, besties. Yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I hope this was useful.